journey of tech.
Hold on one second, Vincent.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to unmute. So let me do a 60-second recap of what we talked about so far. So basically, I have experience, and if you've been following me for a while, you know that I was a coding school instructor. I've worked at several different coding schools and mentored coding school students and bootcamp students. And so I'm interested to interview an actual student since I was never able to go through a coding school on myself. So that was a very short recap of everything I just said. So Vincent, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Gwen, thanks for having me here, speaking with me. So yeah, I started my tech journey 2 years ago at Arizona State University. At the time, it was a free benefit through my company, Starbucks, to go back to school. And I thought that would be kind of neat. And after 4 months, found Kenzie and really enjoyed my time there. Learned a whole lot, React, Django, Node. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to coach. So I was helping other students as well, making money, learning at the same time. Graduated in January, and then Kenzie hired me on for a couple months as an instructor, as a facilitator. And then in March, I had my first dev job with Future Wonder down in Bloomington, Indiana. It's been a great experience.
Awesome. And then you went back to Kenzie, right?
Well, I'm kind of there right now, so I'm kind of trying both things out. You know, I spoke with their team, and they gave me an opportunity that they wish they had when they were starting their tech journey. They said instead of jumping from one job to the next job, or one company to the next company, they'd like to have a little period of, hey, will I like this new place? Will I like the stack? Will I like the folks that I'm working with? So I'm in that phase right now, and it's been cool. It's been great. I'm learning a lot about.
Wow, that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good. It's good interesting. Good interesting. Yeah.
So you're just kind of trying out, because you're working as an actual developer at Kenzie Academy too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
working on some Kenzie software, and then working on some consulting work down in Bloomington with some larger Indiana clients.
That's awesome. So before we get into this, I labeled the stream coding school, and I guess I was muted when I kind of introduced this topic. But basically, I call that a coding school because coding boot camps are generally 3-month programs, and coding schools are longer programs. And so coding schools like to differentiate themselves because usually they're 6 to 12 months, and they go into more computer science and algorithm topics. So it's a little bit different than the high intensity 3-month coding bootcamp type program. So do you want to tell us, or can you define kind of what is a coding school and about the program that you went through?
Yeah, so what is a coding school? Coding schools is designed to prepare you for the industry, right? So they're giving you the hard skills and the soft skills, and they're also relying on, a year, at least in Kenzie's case, a year of repetition of, how do you pull, how do you merge, how do you use all these different flows, how do you build a application from the very beginning, So I think that's really what differentiates, coding school from a boot camp. A boot camp's just downloading a whole bunch of knowledge very, very quickly. But we know that it takes time to develop these skills. And if you have that longer period of time under, this safety net of instructors and peers, it's a great environment. It's a great environment.
So they both kind of give you the same full-time hands-on experience. In general, there are some part-time programs and stuff, but in general we're talking about a full-time experience where you get to either virtually, or most are virtual now, I guess, or
Yeah.
in person, you can sit down with your peers and have kind of an instructor there, and you're constantly working through challenges and trying to build things. And I guess the difference between self-learning, or a huge difference, is that you get a curriculum and kind of a pathway, and you're not constantly trying to figure out what you're doing by yourself, and you also have mentorship available, or should be available, when you need it, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right. It's all, these schools provide direction, right? Direction with curriculum, and direction in, how you're supposed to solve this problem, and then how you're supposed to think about these problems. Because that's what I found out as an engineer and working on different projects. Learning how to learning how to read documentation.
That's the big
It's like,
thing.
it's paramount. Oh yeah, because there's always going to be a curveball, a configuration that's not, the standard. Yeah.
So that's interesting that you brought up learning how to learn, because as a self-learner myself, and having to kind of figure all this stuff out to get my first job, I felt like I really got a crash course in learning how to learn. Basically how to teach myself how to really figure stuff out on my own. Whereas some things I've seen in some programs, I'm not talking about any specific program, but
Yeah.
a lot of students will pay to go through this program, and they won't necessarily learn how to learn as well, because they're expecting to receive all of that information from an instructor. So how do you think programs that teach can kind of get students, or motivate students to still want to learn on their own and not expect everything from their instructor?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That's a great question.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, because it's a paradigm shift from what we're used to in typical school settings in the United States, right? It's you sit down, you go to class, and they teach you the information, and it's all about memorization and regurgitation, and sometimes it's application, and it doesn't go much higher than that. Very little innovative, right? And that's kind of what we're doing. We're learning, and then we're not just, we barely memorize. I barely memorize, at least. I'm constantly going back, okay, what's this, method do? And I should know, okay, this is slice and this is splice. But sometimes I got to go back and say, okay, that's what this one does, that's what this one does. So it's less about memorization. And I think telling these students up front, say, hey, we're not here to give you the answer. Or rather, we're here to give you the answer, but the answer is for you to learn things on your own, right? So like being upfront about that, and being upfront that the folks that are going to be supporting you and the curriculum that's going to be guiding you is not intended to give you the answer. And it's okay to be frustrated, but they should know that upfront. Yeah. Because it is such a shift. It's a big shift in how we learn.
Yeah, so I've noticed that, even being a coding school teacher, is that usually when a student gets to the point of frustration, then it's like, okay, give me the answers, because I can't figure it out. I'm just having a meltdown right now, and I'm going to be very upset. Whereas as a coding school teacher, you're trying to spend a few minutes, lead them in the right direction, ask them the right questions, and then get them to try to be able to figure out just the next step on their own. So there's a certain balance between, actually helping them and then just giving them the answers. And that's a balance that I've really had a hard time finding, especially when the student is frustrated. And if you don't give them the answer right away, they're just going to sometimes get more and more frustrated. Have you run into that?
Oh yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. You just want to sit there and give them the answer and be done with it, because they're frustrated and you're frustrated. But that's not going to benefit anyone, right? It benefits the teacher to spend that time to ask those leading questions. Okay, what are your resources? What are your tools? Where have you seen this before? Where have you done this before? Or even asking the bigger question, what are you trying to do? I think these sorts of questions will help the student look at the problem in a different way, right? And that's what I experienced as a new engineer. I remember thinking early on, this is at Arizona State University when I was just doing basic Python and Java. Every problem, looking back now, is very basic, but I had to look at it at a different angle every single time. And then I remember on some final program that I was writing, I realized, wow, I just have to sit back and kind of bring myself out of the situation, look at it from a different point of view, and that does a great deal of makes a big difference. And I think if you're able to teach that to the student, then that's great. But again, I think they need to come into the school with that expectation that they're not going to have the answers.
Yeah, it's almost like
Or
you have
that-
to train
yeah.
them in how to ask for help and how to problem solve and all of those things.
Yeah, and I think something fitting for that would be like a boot camp or pre-coding school requisite. Like, I really think that the 4 months at Arizona State just set me up for success. I was able to use the problem-solving skills that I already had and kind of fine-tune them to this field. I was able to not struggle with variables, loops, very, very basic things. And because of that, I was able to hit the ground running very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was able to actually absorb this stuff early on rather than kind of like fly by the seat of my pants and hope that I'm getting through it.
So that's interesting because the program that you went through is a year. Now Kenzie Academy has changed to 9 months, but it was a whole year long. But you're saying that it was really helpful for you, even though it's a whole year for you to learn and it starts from the basics, it was really helpful for you to already know going in, to already have done that 4-month program. And that's something
Yeah, I
that,
think so. Yeah, I would find few people who would argue with that. To prepare you to learn is something, right? Learning is not some passive thing. And again, it takes a paradigm shift, right? So I was working at Starbucks for 10 years, and 5 of those years I was managing a store. And I had to recognize in those moments when I was managing that I'm learning new things. Not everyone's recognizing that, hey, you're learning new things all the time. You've got these valuable problem-solving skills or people skills or whatever kind of skill it might be. It takes time to kind of recognize what you're doing. That kind of metacognition, right? And then you can apply that later for future learnings.
yeah. Just
And
to, can you define metacognition real quick?
Metacognition is like thinking of thinking. Thinking about how you think, thinking about why you think, thinking about, why are you asking these questions to yourself, right? And it's valuable. It's valuable.
So I want to take a step back. So you've been a manager at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And which is a very social job. To
Sure.
meet lots of people, it's very physically active. So what made you want to go from that, and you seem like you're very friendly and good with people, to programming, kind of a completely different field and way of working?
Yeah, I was happy with Starbucks. I liked it a lot. I kind of attribute my coming of manhood, from Starbucks. I was a young person, and I grew into adulthood, and I learned, this different level of responsibility because of Starbucks, and I'm very grateful for them. But I didn't really want to continue climbing that ladder, that corporate ladder, right? And I knew that, your salaries kind of peak. And I enjoyed the folks that I worked with, but I didn't always want to work with, entry level folks, even though I loved them. You know what I mean? And with a growing family, I really needed a little bit more money. You know what I mean? And then Starbucks offered free college. So I said, maybe this is an opportunity. What do I want to look into? I knew that I liked math. I liked problem solving. And I didn't necessarily want to manage straight away. So I looked into the engineering field, and then, okay, which one makes the most money? And I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was like a nuclear engineer. I make the most money of the engineers, something like that. But I decided electrical engineering. That's what I wanted to get into. And it was so funny. Like a week after I made that decision, I was talking with one of our friends who's like a PhD electrical engineer. And he's like, if I were to do it again, I'd do software engineering. So that's what I was like, okay, great. You've done 10 years of this, let me do it too. Let me just start it off, software engineering. And that's kind of how I found software. And I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I remember I took like an English class and then an intro to computer science, and they focused on Python and Java. And I really liked it. It was fun. It was cool. I was like, oh, I can do 2 + 2. Oh, this is a string. Oh, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's funny because I also have a friend who's an electrical engineer, and he's trying to get into software engineering now. He said that's the way to go, so I've been helping him get into software engineering.
Oh, sweet. Very cool.
Yeah. So talked about why you got interested in programming. So when you went to Kenzie Academy, I know that you live in Indiana, which is where Kenzie Academy at least used to be physically located.
Yeah.
So what were the deciding factors for you to pick that coding school? You seem like someone who does a lot of research. So what did you look into, and what made you go that route, I guess?
Yeah, I do a lot of research, but I also kind of rely on spontaneity, right? So I made this decision to become a software engineer because of a conversation I had with electrical engineer. And I was fine with staying with Arizona State University for 4 years. I was going to pay for school. Great. I met with a friend randomly in December when the first semester ended at Arizona State. And it was just so funny because we've bonded over, chess and prior employers and different things. And I run into my friend, and he says, hey, I quit my job and I'm going to school to be a software engineer. I said, that's hilarious because I'm doing the same thing. And he said Kenzie Academy. And then I said, okay, great. And I spent about 2 weeks researching Kenzie and calling up the people, and it seemed like a great opportunity. I weighed it versus traditional school, even though it was getting paid for, no loans. But I thought if I could finish school in a year versus 3.5 more years, that means I'd have 3 years of experience. And I knew that would be invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I did quite a bit of research on this when I wrote a book about, how to learn to code and teach yourself how to code, the comparison between coding schools and colleges. And that's one of the biggest pros, I think, maybe the biggest, is that you get to finish in so many months instead of years, and then you get that extra work experience, even if it does take you, 6 months or whatever to find a job after the coding school. You still get years of work experience, so you're already kind of a mid-level developer by the time you would have graduated.
Exactly.
You get that hands-on experience. So the chat's kind of talking about web development right now. If you have a question for Vincent, then let me know. I know a lot of people watch this later, So if you have any questions after the stream, then you can pop into my Discord, which is my chat room group, and you can ask any questions there, and I can either answer them or forward them to Vincent, or we have lots of other coding school teachers and students in the chat as well. So one thing that I've been wondering is, you seem to have gotten a job, so you finished your coding school program, got hired by Kenzie, and then you find a job in industry, and now you're kind of doing both, as you said. But how much, I guess, help did the coding school give you to find, obviously they were the ones that hired you first, so that was kind of helpful.
Yeah.
How much help did they give you to find that job in the real world? I mean, do you feel like they really prepared you fully with interview preparation, resume help, with even learning about the industry as a whole and how to navigate and find jobs and stuff like that? Do you feel like that was adequate going through a coding school?
I will say the biggest piece that they helped me with was resume writing. I think I sent it to my advisor 3 different times, and outstanding feedback. And she prepped me for interviews as well. My advisor. As far as like finding the job itself, people have to recognize, this is another thing that you have to recognize. They will help you, but you got to put in that work.
So they have kind of career advisors and a career program, right?
You bet. Yeah. They kind of help you talk the talk. Okay, what's your story? Okay, what are you about? Who are you? Right? They kind of train you, and they also help you with the resume writing, like I said. But as far as like finding the job, it's not like they're gonna, at least from my experience, they're not gonna like find a job and say, hey, here's this for you, unless it's with Kenzie.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe other schools do that. That seems to be a lot, though. And maybe they'll do that at one point when they're even more established. People are going to them with jobs, say, hey, we know that you all produce outstanding students, outstanding developers. Here's this, we trust you, but it's not there yet.
Yeah. I know some coding schools have partnerships with different companies. I don't know how that works with placement. I guess they could recommend certain students, or they can recommend the company to certain students. I don't know which way that goes.
Yeah, I think Kenzie's got like 20 or 30 different partners, something like that. So they've got like an internal website that has a list of, running, hey, these are open, job postings, and these are urgent needs, right? I think they've gotten more hands-on since I left, reaching out directly to 2 or 3 students saying, hey, I think this position would be great for you, go ahead and apply.
Yeah. I think the weird thing about software development is that once you get a certain amount of experience, it's like you get companies reaching out to you all the time, every day. But especially if you're on LinkedIn and you're online and stuff. But if it's looking for that first job, it's so hard to find the company that's going to, I want to say it's kind of a risk for the company, because they don't know how you perform at work, and you kind of have to really prove, through, networking, building your portfolio, trying to work on applications and stuff like that. So, do you have
it's definitely an investment for every new company that hires anyone new, whether it's software engineering, social work, whatever, Starbucks. It's always an investment, and I think that's something that the new hire should know. The company probably already knows, and if they don't, they should recognize that. But most companies recognize that. The new hires don't always know that hey, they know that they're taking a gamble on you. They know that you might not be committing code in that first whatever period. You're still getting used to the processes, whatever it might be. So that first 3 months is almost like a grace period. Not completely grace period, but like they're not expecting you to be at 100%. And I think if new folks knew that, it would alleviate that, what do we call it? Imposter syndrome, right? Because if you got imposter syndrome, already you're kind of nervous, you're not thinking as well, problem solving is great, and that'll take away from productivity as well.
Were you nervous going into your first job after you got hired out of the coding school?
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
Do you feel like you were prepared?
I think so. I mean, I knew what I was doing. They gave me a coding exercise before I got hired on. It was a React dealing with the Star Wars API, the infamous Swappy.
Yeah.
And I did great, and they told me I did great, so that gave me confidence. But even still, I was nervous. I've always been nervous as far as like going into a new role and all the things that come with that, right? But they were great. They were friendly. They showed me the applications, and when I saw the applications, I was like, this is huge. It's like 50 controllers, and anyways, it was a lot to take in, but yeah, it was good.
Sorry, I'm pulling up the Star Wars API so I can link it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it was like week 2. I don't know. I knew Git. I got to know Git a lot better. I saw some message. I can't believe it. And I was just like, yeah, okay. I'm just going to push to my branch. And I, of course, push to master week 2. And I'm like, oh, man. And then on week 3, I do the same thing with another project. And I'm like, oh, man, what is going on here? But they were all really gracious. And because of that, I learned a lot about Git and how to kind of change the history and things like this.
It sounds like a really good company.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm very grateful.
So Debjit in the chat, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'm going to call you Debjit. Sorry if that's wrong. So he says that his first month on the job, so earlier I think he said he was a self-learner. He did 48 back-end pushes and 4 front-end pushes. It was really hard for him being a junior with imposter syndrome. So one thing I want to say is that it's a really productive first month. And
yeah,
most people just get a couple commits, a couple pushes in their first month because they're still, you spend a week like downloading, installing, running Docker, doing all those other things, getting your environment set up, going through any training programs the company has, all of that stuff. So kudos to you. That's really awesome. But yeah, do you have any advice for anyone going into, I guess, your first job, since you've had a couple now?
Yeah, just be open and honest with what you know and what you don't know. I mean, with yourself, and then reach out to their team. It's okay, what tools are you using? You probably already know this, but if you haven't, ask them what tools they're using. Make sure you've got all that stuff installed. Read up on any new libraries that they might be using. Yeah, I think that's the best way to prepare. Get a good night's sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing that I wanted to ask you about is going back to coding schools. So we talked a little bit about coding boot camps, shorter versus longer programs. Being a student and a teacher, what would you say, I guess, are the pros and cons of 3-month versus 6-month? Is it just a different type of person who would succeed at either one?
So I've not experienced 3 months, so I can't necessarily say, or even 6 months for that matter. I did a year. I just think that repetition helps. The more you do something, the more it becomes second nature, right? And if these basic things, basic problem solvings become second nature, then you can focus on more of the challenging work on how everything gets put together. You know, if you can know what your tools are without any worry, then it's all about thinking about, okay, how am I going to use my tools? How am I going to use this hammer and nail together? You know, or maybe, yeah, that's what I think.
So I guess no matter what, it's a good idea to prepare to study in advance so you're not completely caught off guard, and to see if you like it before you even go into a coding school.
Oh yeah,
And
right.
then afterward, no matter how long the program is, you're still going to have to be, you know, trying to code every day or as often as possible to do, like what you said, have repetition and continue your learning, or you're going to forget everything.
Yep, that's right. And someone can be a great self-learner, but I don't know if that necessarily always goes hand in hand with great self-discipline, right? And that 1 year forces you, in a way, to be disciplined and grow your hard skills, right? If it's 3 months, maybe, hey, that was real tough, I want to take a break, you know what I mean? I'm not sure. I've not spoken with someone who came out of a shorter program.
Okay. Yeah, that would be an interesting topic. And just personally, I've worked with a coding boot camp that was 3 months.
Mm.
Or it was 1 week less. So it was 11 weeks long, basically. And then I also, you know, worked with Kenzie Academy for a while, doing curriculum and instruction. And I also worked with one other coding school that was also 3 months. So I kind of have, I guess maybe I've seen more of that sort of thing. And I do think, like what we talked about earlier, like students are pressured to move so quickly if the coding program is short. You know, they paid a lot of money, they're pressured to move very, very quickly. And if they have no prior knowledge going in, especially because some of them are marketed to people with almost no technical skills at all, like they can
That's
just
right.
email. If they have no prior knowledge, they get lost so quickly, and it just builds and builds. Like if you get lost in week 1 and week 2 on HTML and CSS, then you're never going to pick up and make that up, because the course is just throwing too much material at you too fast. And especially, you really have to dig deep into the curriculum before you go, because it's like some programs will throw multiple frameworks, multiple languages at you in only a few months, and that's really not enough time to pick all of those up if you're starting from zero.
Yep.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of them. Some of their stacks that they teach might not make sense. You know, they might be teaching 2 frameworks that are identical, so it's not really giving them the exposure. Right? That's what I liked about Kenzie. You know, I was learning Django and React and Node, and those are different enough that it kind of gives me a lot of exposure to several different things, and that's very helpful. And that's what I found out is, you know, there are libraries and frameworks that they're all a little different in their own way, but their core concepts are pretty much all the same.
Yeah.
Right? And they pretty much all have like a standard language that they use. And you can use that standard language to kind of further, to speed up the process on how you learn that new language or that new framework.
And it's good experience getting those different frameworks and languages, because it makes you think about things from a new perspective.
Yep.
And then you learn other kind of, I guess, new concepts. It forces you to learn new concepts in computer science and new ways to solve problems and stuff like that. And sometimes when you learn a second language, it makes you understand the first language better.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Stretches your brain or something.
Yeah, because each language, each framework, whatever, it's solving a very specific problem. And just because they're similar, they might have been created to solve different problems.
Yeah. Speaking of languages, so DevJit, Let me know later if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So I put this up on the screen. He's basically asking, how do you cope with learning new languages on the job? If it's a completely new path, jump to a new project immediately?
Yeah, so the first project that I worked on at Future Wonder is this giant 50 controller 2016 PHP project. And I didn't know PHP. I'm still learning PHP, but it's different because I'm not building it from zero, right? I'm able to see, how do these controllers speak to the services? How does it render the template? How do the routes work? And these are all things, all concepts that I've learned one way or another, from React that Kenzie taught me, or from Django, also Kenzie taught me. So I'm able to kind of apply those things.
So the coding school, because jumping into a legacy code base, you said there's a whole bunch of stuff already built in a language that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
So you said that you felt prepared to, I guess, read someone else's code to jump into this big code base and start navigating your way around?
Yeah, it took a lot of time to understand everything that's going on, and I still don't understand everything that's going on. But I understand quite a bit. For instance, they said, okay, let's update some tax information with this application. We want to start taking value-added tax. So I had to look through the project and figure out, okay, what controllers are being touched, what services, what tables do I need to add to, whatever it might be.
Did you have
But
a
yeah, I
certain
think they
approach?
teach you how to read code, and there are so many commonalities, at least with PHP, and then it's like a hybrid between JavaScript and HTML, but not as pretty as JSX. Yeah.
So did you have a certain, I guess, methodology or plan when you were jumping into this new language and new code base and everything? Like, was there a system you were using to try to learn it and navigate around without getting lost?
Yeah, so I think I had tried my old methods, which was like watching YouTube tutorials, and quickly realized that was not so beneficial. Okay, then it was like, okay, straight to the documentation. My thought was, I'm gonna be a subject matter expert on PHP. Well, that turned out not to be what I needed to do. I needed to be a subject matter expert on reading this code, understanding this code, and how to update this code. Yeah, so it just required a little bit of reading with PHP, and then just kind of combing through the application.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny we brought this up because actually I'm working on a video about how to jump into code bases and navigate your way around. So a lot of people get overwhelmed. When you jump into a new code base, you don't know where to start, what to do, how to figure everything out. And a lot of times it's written, especially when you're looking, I guess in certain libraries and certain use cases, it's written in an optimized way that isn't necessarily the same way that you write code for a personal application. So, for example, in front-end frameworks, you're going to see a lot of render functions and stuff instead of using the templating. So it's kind of different, and it's a new way of figuring stuff out, and it can be really overwhelming, especially if you're hit with a ton of code or a huge application that's doing 100 different things.
Yeah. And there was another project that I started on when I first went to Future Wonder. One was this PHP project. Another one was a React Django project. So it was kind of like right in my wheelhouse. And I felt that a little bit about the React. I knew probably very quickly, 95% of what this front end was doing. But there was this 5% that I was just really confused about. It was functions within functions, and they were calling these functions in the render. And now I see that it's okay, that's a commonplace sort of thing to do. But when I first saw it, I thought, oh, whoa, this is completely foreign. And then I just kind of brought that up to the team. I said, hey, should we be doing it this way, or does this seem wrong? And then someone, pointed me directly to an article and said, hey, this is actually the right way to do it, or the way that we found that best suits this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick, so Marion in the chat said, this kind of brings us back to what we were talking about earlier. How do you decide when you're not sure if you want to learn to code before you join a coding school? And then how do you decide what to learn, like what language to learn?
How do you decide if you want to go to the coding school, and then how do you decide what language you want to learn?
Yeah, how do you decide, I guess, if it's right for you, and then which path to take?
Do you like problem solving? Do you like puzzles? You don't have to be an expert at numbers, but do you like numbers? Or can you kind of conceptualize abstract problems? If you can do those things, then I think that you can be a developer. Do you like working with your computer? Do you like focusing on a handful of problems rather than multitasking and kind of going all over the place? So if you like those things, then I think it's great. If you're okay being wrong, if you're okay not having the right answer straight away and learning from your mistakes, then it's great for you. If you have to be perfect about everything all the time, then maybe it's still right for you, but maybe that's something that you just need to overcome.
Yeah, one thing I think that people don't think about is if you go to a coding school, it's actually a really good Kickstarter for other dev adjacent careers too, like being a technical project manager and stuff like that. I think some of the best project managers that I've worked with, they know a little bit about the technical side as well, whether you work in product or project management, or you can go even into dev management or design. There's so many different roles that you can take. It's not just being a coder sitting there coding for 8 hours a day. Web Dev Junkie in the chat said, do you like sitting at a computer for 8 hours? So I guess he means if you like sitting at a computer, then you can be a developer.
Oh.
Which is
Time goes quick. Time passes very quickly.
when you're solving problems. One thing that actually, I feel like when I was a junior, I actually spent more time actually at the computer typing, and now that I have a senior level role, I spend a lot of time at the computer still, especially in deployment weeks and like high stress weeks and stuff. But one thing I've spent more and more time is doing architectural planning and stuff like that. So I'll actually be pacing back and forth at a grease board trying to figure things out, doing research. So it's not only like sitting at a computer typing. There's so many other things, like taking a step back, trying to figure out the problem before you actually start coding, which is, I used to just jump in and start coding right away, and now I spend a lot more time like analyzing and trying to figure stuff out, except on my live streams. Then I just kind of jump in and start coding and see what I can do.
I think that's some great advice, Gwen, especially for me, because I always just come in, all right, this is the ticket, guns blazing,
Yeah.
And I have, an idea, but I think it'd be better sitting down and really mapping out. Yeah, so that's good.
So another question, how do you take, I think someone else is giving advice for Marion.
Oh.
Have you taken courses on Free Code Camp or the Odin project? How are they different? I guess if they've experienced that before. Yeah, that's a really good start, because Free Code Camp is interactive, And so you can, start solving simple problems in your browser and see, do you like it? And that's one thing I think, if you're questioning, it's really good to start just playing around with especially front-end development, because you get that instant feedback cycle of getting to see the result of what you're doing in an environment that you're already used to. So you're already used to using a web browser, and you can see how people might code apps for the web browser. And a good way to start is using Free Code Camp, because it gives you that automatic interactive environment without having to set up anything on your own. You just visit the website, you click learn, and then you start working through challenges, which is great. Oh, Debjit, he wrote out the pronunciation. I'll probably look it up after the stream. Yeah, so we're almost at an hour now. Vincent didn't think he could make it a whole hour talking. So, yeah, so congratulations on your first live stream, Vincent.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
This was great. So real quick, so what's next for Vincent? Like, are there any cool projects or things you're working on, or big ideas? You're going to be a hacker or something like that. What are you getting into?
Just be the best developer that I can. Learn from the people that are around me. There are plenty of technologies that I'm working with right now that I'm okay at, and I'd just like to increase those skills. So nothing crazy, nothing major.
No big projects. You have a GitHub, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Did you want to share it publicly?
Yeah, if they want to check it out, it's mostly, coding school projects, a couple cool final projects from school. One was a neat management app for chores at the house. Kids do a task, you give them some clams. After they get so many clams, they can get ice cream or something like that. And another was kind of like, it was called Spark. It was like Tinder, except for folks you know. It's like, hey, instead of matching for someone, it's a group of folks matching for an activity. Do you want to go out to eat? Okay, what kind of food? Hey, do you want to go see a movie? What kind of movie? You want to go outside? What activity outside? And that was neat, and that's fun.
Yeah. So where can everyone find you if they want to reach out to you? How do you prefer to be reached out to?
LinkedIn. That's where I'm at. I'm not really on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, LinkedIn, I'd say.
Okay, and your LinkedIn is in the description below.
Oh, great, awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much. I'll let you get to work now, Vincent, and thanks to everybody who participated in the chat. I know this is a different hour from when I usually stream or people might be on. So again, if you have any questions or comments about this topic, I love talking about learning to code. So you can jump into my Discord and let me know, or reach out to Vincent, who's on LinkedIn. And good luck with everything, Vincent. Good luck with your new endeavors and career, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gwen. Have a great day.
You too.